that you have studied and worked in both Germany, Austria, and Schweiz.
It's the trio.
So you have basically like a full image of like the deutsche Sprachraum in the context of contemporary music and art.
Yeah.
It would basically be interesting, like, what are your impressions? How do they compare? And whatever thoughts you have about this.
First, I have to say that I do think in a weird way, I know actually Austria and Switzerland better. Because it's not true. I did some projects also like in like this year and last year in Germany. So now slowly I'm learning also more. And of course the festivals and stuff. But I never was in Germany really. I did my bachelor there, but I never really felt I'm like, very like actively part of a scene. Other than having some projects and going there or for festivals, but like really over a year or something. This I never had in Germany. And Germany is so big that it's very hard to say in Germany.
True.
But I mean, I can still somehow say, I think, like just from the, let's say, new music scene, I think, it's really hard because Germany, I think, really has everything kind of. So Germany, I think, has really just scenes where it's for me, it's very conservative and I'm not too excited about it. Or very still close to the classical music industry, which is also totally fine, but like it's just not at the moment what I'm interested in. Like it has definitely these parts, but then it has also the parts where it's very connected to like very chance or interdisciplinary work and very like the if I say here in Switzerland to my friends, let's make it more German, I mean, or something like that, it would mean let's make it like more wacky, crazy, like yes, because there's just a super strong, especially theater movement from in a lot of German places where, well, for them, maybe for me not, but for them at least, if they come from like Spain or from or the UK or France, then German means the style of very like wacky, like
so from like the outsider perspective, it seems that Germany is the country of crazy art.
It's the country of, like in new music, it's the country of like it's the country of like everyone's doing performative stuff. It's the, like we think all the pieces are ironic. I do think that there is this part of it, which I think is just the case because I mean there is the whole history of like Maurizio Kagel and the like object here that is very like this.
True.
Which is strong in Germany. There's like a lot of these theater movements. There's like in Hamburg, Theater Kampnagel, they're super influential in this. And they do just these shows that are very like, I would say, because also like a lot of different mediums. Like it's not even like multimedia show, but sometimes I think also this idea of like really breaking out, like doing a show, but the show is actually you just go around and talk to people, or like, really the concepts that really totally evaporate the new music concept. And this, I think, is, at least from the outside, Germany is the country where this stuff happens. Like the really like the stuff where you don't have really the borders anymore between like what is music, what is performative art. I do think this is Germany.
And you also have the money, right?
No, of course, it's for the
German
money.
government, at least I don't know in the last few years with the war, but like I know that like for a long time the German government did invest a lot of money into culture.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, or like also something like, I mean, this is not new music, but like or like Documenta or something. This is like, I do think these places is the place where like there's like the scandals and the stuff that you can serve, and this is more in Germany. And I think the new music scene they do get at least a little bit of that, definitely. But yeah, then maybe it's more like in Berlin or in Hamburg or like Köln seems there's like cool stuff. But Germany really, I feel, has everything, which can be very cool. But then it maybe depends very much. You need to really fit into your local scene, otherwise it's getting maybe very frustrating because it can be very different. And then like in Austria, I think compared to that is that Austria has this more. It's just like smaller and has this more like there is like I do think there's just these very big figures. One like Beat Furrer, like some very
He's actually Swiss.
who's actually Swiss, but like
Yeah.
like also of course through the teaching, but also just through having a lot of like from Wien and all these like really great like really important institution for like the last 20 years, 30 years for new music.
Yes.
And I think it's very well established. And it is for me it's like for me it's like a nice in between like it's very far removed from the classical concert business, but it's still in a way really like concert music.
Yeah.
And really focused on having this format of like ensemble music continue. And I think there's quite a lot of composers working on that. And I do think there's also very other stuff in Austria. And I think Austria has this very strong, Austria always had the like craziest, weirdest artists, I think. Like there is
like
this
the actionists.
There is this Austrian thing of like very conceptual and very like crazy artists. So I do think it's a very interesting situation, because I do think there's a bit more like established thing that is still, I would not call it like too conservative or like reactionary or anything like this. I would call like, okay, it's maybe by now, maybe there's a new generation that wants to do new stuff for sure also in Austria, but like it is still there. And you have just these crazy random people in Austria, I think, doing really cool stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of like Austrian artists I like a lot, and composers especially. And then in Switzerland, this is very hard to say from the outside. It's really interesting, because from the outside, I never, to be honest, really perceived. I mean, okay, like Beat Furrer, like he's Swiss. Of course, you would think. I mean, he's a Swiss composer, but he's more so well established in the Austrian scene that you think of it more as like, Klangfogen Wien, like all these things he did for more the Austrian scene. So I was never really thinking beforehand, oh, this composer, he or she is Swiss. You know, like when I was studying still in Munich, I was not aware of like, there's a specific identity of the Swiss composer. Yeah. Which with Austria, much more.
Yeah. I think in general, like Swiss identity is very fluid, right?
Maybe.
Like they don't have this like solid national identity like you have in Germany or Austria.
But then like also I know, at least from the, I don't know in music, but I know from the art scene that like the French part and the German part of Switzerland is very detached. Yeah. So like maybe there's the identity of like I'm a artist from Geneva or Lausanne from the French part, or I'm an artist from the German part, or even from like the Italian part, or like a Romansch artist, for sure. But it's not like this Swiss thing. So from the outside, it's super hard to say. But then like from like more the inside of the Swiss scene, I do think that like I do think first of all, even if of course also in Switzerland like budgets get cut and stuff. Just the financial situation is very good, even compared to Austria. Like there's a lot of calls and things you can apply. There's like quite a lot of foundations. So the general level of concerts in more of the marketing and the like outside appearance, and maybe the staging is in a way more refined, I think, here. Then like I think in Austria I was to concerts where it's more like it's also fine, because it's really about the music. It's just performers, they play the music. No one worries that there's not necessarily a nice lighting or stuff like that, you know? And then here you go to a concert and there needs to be really nice stage lighting. There should be some fog because it makes it more epic. Yeah. You know, if there's electronic music, there should be a good speaker system, because in Switzerland they have the money. You know, like it's just a different like expectation on more of these like maybe also shallow, but more of these like practical things. Yeah. In a weird way that was actually, I thought was quite cool when I came here. I was like, and also just way more experimental. I felt like maybe it's because there's more money, but maybe it's also because there's different people. Yeah. I felt I was going to concerts a lot here, and I felt this also might be a specific band thing, I'm not sure, but almost every concert I go, I'm like, okay, maybe I necessarily it's not my style or I don't like it, but like it's definitely ambitious. Like maybe it's like on the more technological side. I heard some like it was a very nice like VR concert thing. maybe it's more on the technological side, or it's more on like it's just the ambition of the production.
Yeah.
It's just higher here. For sure, the money is part of it, but it's also a different mindset. Like how I told you that the studies here teach you more about like how to market yourself, how to sell, or like how to make a career in the art music market thing. It's just much more like, it's in a way also more capitalist.
Yeah, much
than
more
in Austria,
career oriented.
much more like this. Where in Austria, I don't think anyone ever taught us about that. It's not the thing. It's like, no, you need to compose good music, then it will happen. And here it's like, actually, it doesn't. But yeah, you need to do good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not only that. So just very different mindset, which I slowly came around to appreciate actually quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it has there's always the danger that it will become like fetishist, right?
Yeah, totally,
that like it's like only about the aesthetics. It's only about making things look good, like, and the content it's completely
like this happened totally. I was definitely in shows here where it's like this, but I was also definitely in shows where a lot of shows where I'm like, yeah, it's really the ambition. I think I don't know. I was really also in shows where I'm like, okay, this is actually it's not really working yet as a concert, but like I see they're trying to do something that is quite ambitious and that is like feels new, at least to them or the performers or the composers or creators, which in Austria are not necessarily always the case. In Austria it was more like, it's a nice concert, I like it a lot, let's go to the next concert. But it's not like, oh, I can do this kind of thing, you know? And here I had way more of these experiences of like, oh, okay. And even if it failed a bit, even if the thing was not amazing, I was still like, okay, they're really trying here to do stuff.
Yeah.
And I really wonder, I really wonder if that is, because I think it's a bit of a new thing also in Switzerland, and I wonder if this will create a more Swiss aesthetic identity, you know? If this will create more and more people that come from this scene, like Basel, Bern, also Zurich, maybe also Geneva scene, that create more of a. I'm really wondering. Like,
interesting.
Because I can imagine, because I think it's very strong, and I think there are a lot of really interesting artists in Switzerland right now.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that will be the case or not. Because then they will be like, no, actually I'm French.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Like, for me, it's really interesting. Like, when I was in Austria, it really felt like a bit like guerrilla concert making, which was like, on one hand, like, which really cool. On the other hand,
here.
Yeah,
like, you still have this here, but it's more like the guerrilla concert making here is like, yes, you do, and in the end, of course, you don't get all the money you apply for, never.
Yeah.
But like, it's guerrilla concert, but you apply for a lot of money.
Yes.
You know, and then maybe you get on a fraction, but you still have money.
Yes.
Which in Austria, is a like super independent underground thing, I'm saying.
But maybe to go back to the original question, I was asking not only about the like the music making and the concerts themselves, but also about the academic part of it.
Okay. And, true. You said about the studying.
And for me, it would be interesting that because, like, okay, there's a lot of money going into
for sure,
music here.
For sure.
Is there an actual academic critique of where this money comes from?
Yeah, good question. I do. Well, first of all, I do think that, like, especially the music is always like, also here, I think, is slower to think about these things and critique about these things than like theater or writing, and probably also visual art. So I would 100% say that in these areas, for sure, it's a very big topic. And in music, I experience this more rarely. I think a bit the mindset often is more, it's less like, we critique this, and we are also, I mean, I'm not saying that people are not aware of like also hypocrisies and things like that, and like where the money comes from. It's like big foundations, and like there was the big Nestle fund that I think gave a lot of money. It's a super big company which actually stopped now, but there's, of course, and people are aware, but I feel there a bit more. There's the mindset of, I meet more people that have the mindset that say like, okay, there is this money, let's make really the best out of it, what I want to do. Like, and then of course, if I'm like a political minded person and I do a political piece
Yeah.
and critique these things in the piece or whatever. Yes, but I think a lot of people are also a bit like, no, but I don't want to do that. I believe in the art as also its own thing, and I just
of course.
take what I get, and it's nice. I do think there is also a bit this mentality. I mean, but like, if I'm very practical, like I think, for example, like Dakota did a piece where he was maybe the piece in Switzerland I heard it was the most like, at least questioning, like, because he was like, there were different like hierarchy of like listeners and like questioning of like, a bit more like you had to pay to get into the maybe nicer concert room where you had more experience and less experience. And for example, like I don't see so many pieces like that, music pieces in Switzerland.
Yes.
I do think there could be more of that, but I also sometimes do understand this feeling of like, okay, but like I do believe in the general intention of what I do, that maybe it's not like directly political, but it is political in a way. If you do a very crazy piece in a theater, I think, and also transform the theater or the art institutions itself, even if it's not necessarily like through like some political, like a more activist art, but for like in I do think it's within just this thing of like trying to break institutions. And that is, I think, actually a very important part of more critique.
Yeah.
It's not like necessarily critiquing directly, but it's like, okay, yeah, let's do a piece in the village,
Yeah.
which also is a critique. It's not direct critique, but it is like a. So I think there's a lot of this in Switzerland, but it's maybe more a bit like not this. I didn't hear a lot of super like direct political pieces or anything.
Yeah.
Always more like, maybe we can put more care onto parts of our society that is super underrepresented. This stuff, yes, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I feel in general, like from the week so far that I've been here in Switzerland, it feels like it hasn't yet suffered from the disease of political division that we have now in the West.
Interesting.
You look at all countries around Switzerland, they're super politically divided, right?
Interesting.
And in Switzerland, it feels like they somehow managed to find like a balance that would allow the political parties, different as they are in ideology, to still work together.
Yeah.
Right? For example, the party there that is like the equivalent to the FPÖ or the AfD is, if I'm not mistaken, like in government working with the other parties.
Yeah. Yes, which I think, but this is also probably a thing of, I don't know enough about like the Swiss political system, but this is for sure a thing also about how the system works, that like they have to, and there's all the federal system that like just makes them work together a bit more like, so I do think it's also just like such a different setup of the political system that it leads to this. Yeah, interesting. I was thinking if this also applies to just like the people I know here or like in the music scene or whatever. Because I think the topic of like political correctness in art and music is very big in Switzerland in both ways, in the sense that like I do think in Switzerland there are very, very like it's a very, very important topic. Like I think a lot of foundations look for, not necessarily like things that are politically correct, but like look for very like the things that fit in the whole context of decolonization, of like gender equality, all these things is like
to sum it up in one word, woke.
Yeah, of course. Like it's a super like trying to be woke country in the art scene, I would say.
Yeah.
With like sometimes like good effect, sometimes bad effect. I don't know. It depends always like on what then actually the artist what they are doing.
Of course.
It's really like there's no clear correlation.
Yeah.
But like, so this is a big thing. But then, on the other hand, I don't know. I don't experience like a lot of like dispute or discussion about that, which I do think is a big part of the, like if I think more of general society, at least in Germany, it's all like a big culture clash between like the people who are like, that like, I think so much in the political system is actually just like cultural division between these different ideas. And there's a lot of course, there's a lot of gradients. So it's difficult, but like, I don't experience this so much here because I
Mhm.
do think, first of all, here it's like this very safe bubble space.
Yeah,
Also, somehow,
of course, they're
so
also not
like
part of the EU, so they
there's not,
weren't.
there's like
No one forced them to accept immigrants. Yeah,
exactly.
that's
There's
true.
not this thing. They actually Switzerland is surprisingly super used to having a lot of immigrants.
Yeah.
Like the like more like historically speaking is actually
Mhm.
very high. The number of so like it's for sure a big discussion, but I'm
Yeah.
also as German not super I follow more like German politics
Yeah,
than
yeah,
like
of
Swiss
course.
politics. But like in more like the art and music scene, like of course there's like discussions about like different political like stances but like yeah, and I do think there's a lot of pieces and things that get like curated and produced that deal with like these topics.
Mhm.
But then also I think I met so many people who really like it's like this mindset I said earlier, really are like I don't know, I mean I did a piece about the glaciers and of course it has like there's like a green climate change
Yes.
aspect to it, of course. And it's part of a big exhibition about that. And that is definitely a very political thing. That is
Yeah.
definitely very like it's a bit more like also a bit more I feel like let's save our glaciers. Like it's more a bit of a we really like our nature. Like
Yeah.
really, it's less like let's save the whole world. It's more a bit like localized like let's save our glaciers,
Yeah.
which also you can criticize because like maybe it's not the most important thing to spend money on, but like it's also that is not this like from the 90s this very left anarchist thing is a very different thing. So that, but I did not write this piece up because of that. I was like actually I ended up there in this exhibition, but like I started writing the piece about like very personal things.
Mhm.
I don't know, so. I do think there's quite a lot of people who I at least encountered here who really don't care too much about like the political landscape, which leads to good results because then they don't care too much about like what is expected from them to do. But then maybe leads also to the results that like, okay, but then maybe there's some stuff that artists here should do a bit more, which is like critiquing more like stuff like where's the money coming from, like what is the Swiss way of living, like
I'm not saying necessarily artists have to do that.
No,
It's just like I was asking if like if
Exactly.
it's because like for me it's always like when there's like a lot of money coming from like thin air, it's like where is it coming from? Like it's like I'm very suspicious of that, but this is like a personal thing for me.
Of course, I totally understand that.
And of course, art doesn't have to be political. Like I think this is also the danger there because a lot of people use art as a political vehicle instead of like making art that is also political. Of course, I have no problem with political art, but once it's used as a political vehicle, then it's just like it's not really art, in my opinion. It's just like
I in my experience, it's just like this. There is. I do think if I think a bit more also about like theater. We visited like a great theater in Lausanne, Théâtre Vidi, which I think is very nicely run. Like, or the programmation looks cool. Like, it's really interesting. It's really exciting. I think what they do, and I know they do a lot of shows that are very conscious, like you would call Vogue, but like are very conscious about like political matters, social matters, for sure. But then also like I don't know, we went there and watched a show about like I don't know how many pianos playing on their own with like fire and stuff, like a basically circus thing. But I thought it was really good. Like it sounds a bit ridiculous, but it's like the Philippe Ken is like a really amazing show that I thought was like a super well show about like it was about like a history of like horror shows in France in like the 19th century or something.
Interesting.
Like I'm messing it up a bit now, but like show that
sounds
like
fun.
Very different context and like super amazing. And they do this here too, these shows. Like so it doesn't have to be necessarily about the topic that is right now in the trend for good reasons or bad reasons. But like I do think that I do feel that here there is like quite a nice it's just like like I say again, like the ambition and like kind of seriousness of like there's a bit of the French thing of like we want to be like elitist thing. We want to do the best shows and we program just really good artists and they get money and which is a slightly elitist thing that I called French now. And then there is the German thing of like, but the artists should be free and they need to talk about the political thing. And, and I do think there's a bit of a mix, which is not so
it creates like an interesting balance between the two.
Yeah, maybe.
Interesting.
That theory I just came up now.
Yeah.
But maybe it's true. I'm not sure. Yes.
Cool. So someone needs to research this.
Yes.
If someone is listening and is interested in this topic, please do the research.
Yes.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
So what should we drink to the last sip?
The Alpenraum.
To the Alpenraum.
Germany, Austria, and Switzerland.